Excelsior, true believers! You are about to embark upon a journey, a trip to the 70s and 80s when mighty Marvel Comics ruled over all. The Defenders, Doctor Strange, the Champions, Deathlock, the Sub Mariner, the Incredible Hulk, Killraven, the Son of Satan, the Macabre Man-Thing, and all your other Bronze Age favorites every week appearing on Defenders Dialogue. Now here are your guides, Christopher Golden and Brian Keene.
Excelsior, true believers.
And welcome back once again to Defenders Dialogue. Chris, Skype is not cooperating with us this morning, so we apologize in advance, dear listeners, if we sound echoey or stuttery. I'm sure engineer Matt Wilderson will do his best to make us sound professional.
And I hope his best is good enough because we are so unprofessional. There is a reason, folks, that we don't do video of this podcast.
Well, and if we did, you know what? I will take screenshots right now. There's a snapshot of Chris. Oh, and there's one. Oh, I look horrible in that snapshot. And I'll put that up. That's exactly why we don't do video.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, it's not.
This is, there's a the thing is I did trim my beard the other day, Brian, but my hair is getting a little out of control. So,
as you can notice, it's been a while since I shaved my back or my shoulders. I mean, I look like the gorilla guy from the Headman and the Defenders.
Yeah, well, that's it. His fur was blue, though, wasn't it?
It was inked and colored to be blue, but
yes.
we're going to get into strange inking and coloring choices here in this week's episode of Defenders Dialogue. But hopefully Matt will make us sound good.
Yeah. Hey, listen, before we jump in, we should sort of tease people with the knowledge that next week's episode is Defenders Dialogue episode 100.
Well, yes, but before we do that, I want to remind folks that Matt's books are on sale on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, type in Matt Wilderson, his books will pop up. He's actually selling them from home as well and signing them for people for no additional charge. So if you log on Twitter and tweet him, he'll be happy to send you one. But yes, he will be engineering next week's double-sized 100th anniversary episode.
Exactly, which includes many guest stars whom we can't name at this point.
Oh, I think we should name them.
Well, because we don't know 100% that all of them are going to be able to make it.
Okay, well, that's true. But we have, yes, I want to do this from all but one who's tentative. So,
yeah,
fuck it. I'm up for announcing who we have.
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
All right. We have returning to the show, Scott Edelman and J.M. DeMatteis.
And Tom Snigoski, who's subbed a couple of times.
That's right, Tom Snigoski. We have making his first appearance on this show, Cullen Bunn. And tentatively, we also have making his first appearance on this show, Victor Laval. Yes. So what are we going to talk about? Well, that's the surprise. You'll have to wait till next week to find out.
I mean, aside from it being Brian and Chris's usual idiocy. I mean, although I will say that I promise you that we will not be advising anybody to inject disinfectant into their veins.
That's right.
In any case.
Now, I do have an ace in the hole for that episode, though, because while all of us are debating, Marvel legend Keith Giffen, of course, does not have Skype, but I do have him on speed dial. So if all of you come at me for my love of Jack of Hearts, I'm going to get Keith on speakerphone, and he will back me up because he too loves that character.
I don't think we're going to come at you. I actually really, as I said, I really like Jack of Hearts as long as I don't think about it too much. Like, I like the character. I like seeing the character, even though his costume design is a little silly. But I feel like if I spend 30 seconds trying to, ponder the character, then I'm like, that's really fucking stupid. But I like him, and I'd like to see more of him.
Well, you know what?
In fact, Brian, I think that when we're done with Supervillain Team Up, we should take a very short break, one episode between this and Man-Thing, and have a short episode where we cover the Marvel Spotlight or Marvel Premiere, whatever, one shot of Jack of Hearts.
I think that's a great idea. A great idea. We've talked about him on this show during his very brief stint with the Defenders. But basically all we talked about was his sexism and his shoulder pads at that time. All right.
This thing too, it's sort of like I'm not sure which classic Marvel creator invented Jack of Hearts, but I feel like it's like somebody looked at the Royal Flush Gang from Batman.
Right.
And said, what if they were in space?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of that in Bronze Age Marvel. We're going to see it today with Supervillain Team Up issue number 7, in which Steve Englehart looked at something else from Batman and said, what if it was in the Marvel universe?
Yeah. And I will say that, we'll get into it. There's a project of mine that is very much inspired by the Shroud, which we won't. In any case, this issue 7 of Supervillain Team Up is written by Steve Englehart, drawn by Herb Trimpe with inks by Pablo Marcus. A great team. And we open where we left off, Brian. The Fantastic Four have been summarily dismissed from Castle Latveria by none other than Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
That's right. He's revealed that Latveria and America have signed a non-aggression pact. So superheroes from America are not allowed to interfere in Dr. Doom's affairs.
No Americans.
Yep.
No Americans are allowed to interfere in Dr. Doom's affairs. Namor is still bound by honor and his vow to Dr. Doom to be his lackey, basically, because Doom has a cure for Namor, which he will not share until he gets what he wants out of the Submariner. Right. And now, Brian, as you said on Twitter earlier today, anyone who claims that comics were not political needs to do nothing but read the first 2 pages of Supervillain Team Up number 7.
Yeah. We get this wonderful, wonderful Bronze Age sequence. And it really sums up everything I love about the Fantastic Four. They're striding away from the castle. And Ben Grimm, the Thing, he and Johnny Storm are having none of this. He's saying to Reed Richards, he's like, we're getting stopped by Henry Kissinger. And, Reed's like, I don't like it any better than you do. But after winning the confidence of every president from Kennedy to Ford, the Fantastic Four is not about to buck the government's decisions. And, Johnny says, hey, look, you call me hot-headed, but it seems to me that, the American government's making a big mistake here. And Reed agrees. He says that may be. But, I'm sure Dr. Kissinger feels this is the best way to neutralize Doom's threat. And the Thing laughs at him. He's like, neutralize Doom? And then we get, Reed Richards is a dick. He says, listen to the two of you. You talk like revolutionaries. They talk like the youth, right. of the 60s. I mean,
this is a conversation going on today between many a boomer and millennial.
Yep. Absolutely.
And Reed says, if you don't like the way I'm running this team, you can always go it alone.
Yep.
And, Johnny, let's go. He says, you talk about how Ben and I sound, but you sound like Neville Chamberlain before World War II. He said Hitler wasn't going to bother anybody.
And he points out Doom is just a modern day Hitler. Yeah. He's got the same goal, conquest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really, again, it's yet another way to say comics and any kind of heroic story are by their very nature political.
Exactly.
They're basically saying, if you're shitty, you deserve a punch in the face. I mean, this is it's a fundamental tenet of any story about heroes. The things that they stand up against. I don't know. Do we need to go any further with that?
We don't need to go any further. And the Submariner wants to go no further either. Doom is, bragging to him about his statecraft, and Submariner's like, I will hear no more. And he walks away sulking. Americans are the most double-edged people on the face of the earth. All my life, I've been torn between hating them and helping them. I feel Submariner so much in this panel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Submariner is basically Rorschach before the final straw. He's like, he still feels guilty about not helping, but he hates them. Anyway, the Shroud makes his appearance.
Yeah, Submariner gets back to his elegant prison cell that we covered in last episode, and the Shroud is there waiting for him.
Yes, the Shroud's there waiting for him. He introduces himself. Now, last episode, Namor happened to see him outside the castle, so this is not the first time he's seen him, and he's curious. And the Shroud basically says, I'm trusting you not to shout an alarm, and your silence tells me what I want to know. And basically, he wants to talk to him. And then, Brian, the Shroud basically tells him to settle in and get comfortable because he's about to tell him the secret origin of the Shroud.
That's right. So Namor climbs into his bathtub. I bring that up because the bathtub is going to provide a real comedic moment here in a couple pages.
Yeah. And I will point out, by the way, that now we're about to discuss the origin of the Shroud. And let's just get out at the beginning that the Shroud shares 90% of his origin story with both Batman, Doctor Strange, and Iron Fist.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So go ahead.
It began for the Shroud some 17 years ago. His parents were walking him home from a concert when a robber who is not Joe Chill, but looks exactly like Joe Chill,
right,
jumps out, shoots mom and dad dead. The boy swears, hands clasped, kneeling at his bed, just like Bruce Wayne's origin, that he will devote his life to fighting killers and all criminals. He becomes a scholar of criminology, a master scientist, trains his body as an amazing athlete, just like the Batman. And then the other Marvel superheroes burst onto the scene, and he decides that he too will be a superhero. So where does he travel to, Chris?
He travels to the mountains of the Himalayas in search of the cult of Kali. And That's right. Brian, is where we divert a little bit into the whole reason why Brian and Chris like the Shroud. Because his origin diverts. And so instead of wise, sorcerer monks like Doctor Strange, or martial artists like Iron Fist or Batman, he seeks out the cult of Kali, which employs essentially assassins, and they teach him all that they know about fighting and martial arts, but they also teach him to master darkness, to control darkness, and to the extent that when he has completed that mastery, they take a Kali-shaped brand and burn out his eyes.
That's
Brian.
Right. That's right.
Branding his face.
I'm really surprised this made it past the what was the censory board? The comic what?
Comics Code Authority.
Comics Code Authority. That panel. I mean, it's gorgeous. Herb Trimpe on art, but yeah, it's this hot collie-shaped poker burning out the Shroud's eyes.
Yeah, it's a great, and basically he stumbles out into the snow to put the worst of the pain aside. And then he goes home, and now he can see because light and darkness are one and the same to him. So even though he has no eyes, his senses, like Daredevil, are so keen that he doesn't need eyes, and he sews himself the Shroud costume. But that's, again, like, that's the point at which I was like, holy shit. Like, the Shroud was interesting prior to this, but I remember reading that page and going, okay, I'm in now. They just burned out this guy's eyes. All of a sudden, it's a Hammer. Hammer Studios has made a superhero movie. That's what has happened here.
It then leads to my favorite moment from this issue. Namor's like, well, that's a very interesting origin story. I've never heard it before. But what do you plan to do? And the Shroud says, it's simple. I plan to kill Dr. Doom. He says, should I succeed, I'll be the world's foremost superhero overnight. And should I fail, well then, what better way for one such as I to die? And Submariner leans back in his bathtub.
You're going to share this panel, right? On
yes.
YouTube.
Submariner says, oh, I see. You're insane. For a moment, I thought you might be of some help to me.
It's a great moment. It's a great moment. I laughed. I did laugh when I read it. And basically, he just like submerges himself back underwater. He's like, oh, okay. Fuck it now. Okay. Oh, I see. You're insane. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So the Shroud, the Shroud basically says, look, mock me if you will, ignore me if you will, but before the dawn comes to Castle Latveria, you'll hail me as your savior. It's basically saying, if I kill Doom, you'll be free.
That's right.
We come back to our friends, the Fantastic Four.
Yep. And they're still arguing politics.
Yep.
But Reed flies them to Hydro Base, where they're met by Tamara and Namorita and all the others on Hydro Base. And Reed Richards tells them, I have to warn you about what Dr. Doom is up to.
Right. So I can't go there myself because of the United States doing what they usually do, which is making friends with dictators. And I should say doing what we usually do. And he's just going to tell them so they'll do something about it where he can't. Because, Reed, he's like the Boy Scout. He's got to follow orders.
Right.
And then we cut to my second favorite humorous panel in this issue. Dr. Doom is very sad, ladies and gentlemen, because, he used to be loved by his subjects, and now they terrify him. Or he terrifies them, I should say. He terrifies them because they know what he's like in the real world. But so he's bummed out because he's out walking his dogs through the village. He's taking his dogs for a walk.
That's right. And he's thinking about...
He doesn't have people for that, apparently.
Yeah, and he's thinking about, he let slip his mask of benevolence towards his people. In some ways, that was an error. For though none of them could stand against him, neither do they flock to his side. So he wants friends because Doom walks forever alone.
Right. Now, from that moment of humor, we get to another moment of, I'm surprised the Comics Code let this go through.
Now, I did not read this issue of Supervillain Team Up when I was a kid. My first issue was number 8, which we're going to talk about here in a couple minutes.
Well, I read it as a kid, but I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah. What was your reaction to this as a kid? Do you remember?
No, but I think I probably just thought, like, he was courting this girl.
Right. Because for those who have seen Braveheart, Dr. Doom is about to declare prima nocta.
Exactly. So Doom basically walks into a family home. Let's see, what's the father's name again here?
Klaus.
He walks into Klaus's home, interrupts dinner with Klaus and his wife and his daughter Gretchen. And he says, as your sovereign, Klaus, I have come to exercise my droit de seigneur, my absolute right to the company of any woman in the land. And so his daughter Gretchen has to go off with Doom, basically to submit herself to being raped by Doom.
Yep.
And again, I'm just like, weirdly, for me, reading this now, it crosses over from Doom's. It had a moment of, oh, this is too real.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? Like this is, all of Doom's nonsense as a supervillain. He's now not a supervillain in these panels. He's now just a rapist who needs to be fucking smashed.
That's right. So Doom lets his dogs go, and he tells Gretchen they will do as they are told. The hounds know their master. And you, Gretchen, do you know your master? And he grabs her, in both metal-clad arms. He's looming over her. What's going to happen to Gretchen, Chris? Well, the Shroud is going to stop it.
That's right. The Shroud arrives and yells, "Let her go, Doom!" Now, what I find interesting in this, now the pages that follow, on the one hand, the Shroud, it's cool because this character we've never really seen prior to the last couple of issues, he's totally unknown to Marvel readers at this point, is about to do a thing that all of the major superheroes in the Marvel Universe have thus far failed to do.
Exactly.
However, the scene itself is really stupid. It's a fight scene between the Shroud and Dr. Doom that has more dialogue narration of their fighting and what they're doing and telling each other before they do it what they're about to do and how brilliant they both are. Doom has blasts him, but the Shroud has the cloak to protect himself, and the Shroud. I don't know. Then the Shroud has. This is my favorite part. I could do more than defend. I can attack, as my boomerang makes perfectly clear.
And basically, we get pages and pages of. We talked on the previous episodes about how Doom's armor is much like the Son of Satan's trident. It does what they needed to do in the moment.
Yeah, the fingers of Doom's armor shoot poison darts at the Shroud.
Yep. The sonic drill blast makes another appearance. It blow by blow, we don't need to do. Basically, we see Doom's armor on display. Until the Shroud attaches a magnesium bomb to Doom's chest, setting him on fire. So Doom rips off his chest plate, revealing his skin beneath, and that is when the wolves that his dogs were out hunting attack him.
Yes.
And then the wolves and the dogs.
So the dogs, it's sort of like a fly came by. A fly went by the children's book. So Doom's chest plate comes off. The wolf attacks Doom. The dogs attack the wolf who's attacking Doom. And all together, the whole group of them, or like Yukon Cornelius and his dogs and the Bumble, they go over the edge of the cliff, Brian.
That's right. And the Shroud, he tells Gretchen, "I did it. Dr. Doom is dead." And then he returns to Sub Mariner.
Yeah.
And he tells him, "Hey, I killed Dr. Doom. You're free. You're not bound to him anymore by your word."
But I also have to interject here and say that both here and later, the Shroud calls him Subby.
Yeah.
Subby, hey Subby. because I'm sure the cult of Kali is overly familiar with one another like that.
So is that it? Is Dr. Doom dead? Well, no, he's not, because somewhere, as a light begins to break through shimmering darkness, another man wonders the same thing. And that man is, of course, Dr. Doom, who wakes up at Hydra Base. And he's bandaged up. His chest is bandaged up. And before him is Tamara and Namor's cousin, Namorita, who tell him they found him at the bottom of one of his rivers, nearly drowned. And even as he has captured Namor, they have captured him.
Now, before we move on to issue 8, I just want to say something about this moment. If you captured Dr. Doom, Brian, what would be the first thing you would do?
Take off all his armor.
Yeah, there you go. Let's separate him from his weapons, shall we?
Yeah.
But no, they don't do that. Leading into Supervillain Team Up, issue 8, guest starring, Brian, the Ringmaster and his Circus of Crime.
That's right. Now, Chris,
I thought this series couldn't get any weirder.
I have so much love, nostalgic love for this issue. It was, it was not the first Marvel comic I bought. We've talked about on the show. Those were actually Defenders issue 32 and Captain America and the Falcon 194, the beginning of the Mad Bomb saga. But in that first year of buying Marvel comics, this was one of the very early ones. So it was my first introduction to Dr. Doom, to the Shroud, to everybody from Hydro Base, to the Ringmaster and the Circus of Crime. The only character I had any familiarity with was Namor. And, that was from the pages of Defenders. So I have so much nostalgic love for this issue. Steve Englehart again writing, Keith Giffen and Owen McCarran taking over from Herb Trempe on art. And as I mentioned earlier, the weird coloring errors. We open with a splash page. Tamara, whose skin is normally red, is now purple. You're reading this in a collected edition. Maybe
it's been corrected for the collected edition.
Yeah, in the original floppy, she's purple. Namorita is sort of violet hued, and Doom's armor is almost orange on that first page. Now they correct it with the second page, but I don't know what happened there.
Interesting. It's also particularly interesting because a lot of times, certainly with the lettering, they don't make corrections, but clearly that error was enough to cause them to do. I actually have a T-shirt with a bunch of the female heroes from Marvel Comics on it.
Right.
And from this era, classic vintage Marvel heroes. And on that T-shirt, the She-Hulk is purple.
Wow.
I don't know why, but she is. In any case, Doom just lies to them. He's like, no, you've got this all wrong. No, I'm helping Namor. We're buddies. We're allies. We're friends. And then, the amphibians at Hydro Base are like, sure. That's not what Reed Richards told us. And, Doom, very much like someone else we know, is basically like, you believe Reed Richards? That's fake news. He hates me. What do you think he's going to say? Nobody hates me more than Reed. He's never going to say the truth about me when I'm doing such good things. Yeah.
That's right. Oh,
and he says that in exchange for Namor's help, Namor came to him for help in transforming the amphibians at Hydro Base back to their normal human selves.
That's right.
So, yeah.
That's right. So they take Doom, from Hydro Base back to his castle. They use a submersible craft. They come up underneath the castle. And, he's stalking the halls with Tamara and Namorita. And, one of his assistants, Bela, comes to meet him.
I just love this moment. Go ahead.
And Bela says, master. And Doom says, Bela, get back to your hole, worm. Your betters have business to pursue. And Tamara's having none of this. She says, how dare you treat this man like that, Doom? And Doom says,
Bela, he enjoys it.
I am like unto his father, and he, my errant son.
Is that not so, Bela? Yes, master. As you say. But the Submariner has escaped, and then Doom says, "What? You wretched, worthless, woe begone! Get out of my sight!" And he hurls Bela, his errant son, down the harbor. But I love that moment. Bela, he enjoys it.
I remember reading this as a kid, and I was worried that we didn't find out what happened to Bela, because I don't know who the main characters are in this book at that point.
Oh. I love that moment.
I also remember having a crush on Namorita. I was probably 8 years old when I read this, and that crush continues today as a 52-year-old man.
Wait, you had a crush on the almost, naked girl in the... Yeah.
I did. Her costume reminded me of Red Sonja's, so,
I could see that.
Yeah.
See that.
Anyway.
So basically, they're probably not... It's probably not very smart of them to have Doom lead them into his castle. But in any case, Doom is very upset to find out that Namor is free. Namor, remember, folks, believes that Doom is dead.
That's right.
The Shroud is out taking Namor to his aircraft.
His bat plane. We can't call it the bat plane.
Yeah,
Shroud plane.
Take him to the Shroud plane. The Shroud jet. And what does he discover?
Well, the people of Latveria, the people who live under Doom's rule, have discovered the plane, and they are destroying it.
I love the fact that everyone who lives in Latveria is basically not living in the era in which the comic book is done.
Right.
They're literally peasants out of a Universal horror film.
Yep, absolutely. All the way down to
they're attacking the Shroud plane with pitchforks and torches. Nobody has a sledgehammer, nothing. Pitchforks and torches.
Yep. So, Namor's like, what are we going to do? I don't have the strength to fly us out of Latveria. And I'm not, before Shroud can answer him, one of the dogs that belongs to one of Doom's subjects attacks. And, Namor's happy for that. He says, well, at least this foe is one I can beat.
Yeah. And I also love the incredulity that the Submariner has throughout this issue, because the Shroud keeps giving him orders.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and Namor is just like almost talking to himself, like, I can't believe this guy is ordering me around. He's just like, oh my God. Anyway, so
they go across this
bridge by Neptune. Hold on. By Neptune, he orders me about as if I were a child, and yet until I am cured, he's saying there's nothing he can do.
Yeah, so they go across this rope bridge straight out of Indiana Jones. The Shroud cuts it so that they can't be pursued. And night is falling on Latveria. Then we transition back to Hydro Base.
Briefly back to Hydro Base, and then, Brian, we get our guest stars that we've been waiting for now.
That's right.
We get, because again, much like a Hammer film or whatever, you're traveling across Latveria, and what are you going to find? You're going to find an itinerant circus that's basically made camp here, and it happens to be a circus run by American fugitives, criminals who can't go back to America right now, so they're clearly traveling around Europe, and for the moment they're safe within the borders of Latveria. It's the Ringmaster and his circus of crime.
And, this was lost on me as a kid, but as an adult, I love that the Ringmaster is sitting there saying, until they stop looking for us in the United States, we got nowhere to go. Maybe we're washed up. Our careers as broken down as my hypnotic hat.
Yeah.
But we can always fall back on honest work, and it's a burden for them to have to fall back on honest work.
It sucks for them to just have to be a regular circus as opposed to a circus of crime. And I do love, again, the hat is like, it's a giant top hat, a sort of purple top hat with whatever the mechanism is in the hat is like, it's like the spring has broken and it's like boing out of the front of the hat. And I think of the guy, the magician character from Frosty the Snowman here.
So Namor and the Shroud come in, and unlike normal Bronze Age Marvel tradition, there's not an immediate fight. Namor says basically, hey, the title of this book is Supervillain Team Up. I have no quarrel with you, Ringmaster. And Ringmaster says, okay, I'll listen to you. And he tells him, we're being pursued by Dr. Doom's forces. And Ringmaster's like, no fucking way. We're not tangling with Dr. Doom, which then leads into the standard Bronze Age fight.
Yeah. And we get to see, the classic moment where every circus or carnival character in Marvel Comics eventually yells, "Hey, Rube!"
Yep.
Which is they say a time-honored Carney battle cry.
And it is actually. It is. If you for our younger listeners like Wesley Southard out there, if you Google "Hey Rube," you can read all about it. It's actually a fine tradition.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, he yells for Cannonball, which is a guy clearly who shoots himself out of a cannon, but he also looks like Bullet Man, the Human Bullet, a toy from that era.
Yep.
And the Gambino brothers, who were acrobats.
Yep.
Apparently, Princess Python is nowhere to be found in this iteration of the Circus of Crime.
No.
So there's a big fight, which ends with the Raja sitting on top of a giant bull elephant who runs down the Submariner. And then the Submariner punches the elephant across the circus, basically.
Well, yeah, because what happens is the elephant knocks Namor into a water tank, which, of course, gives him his strength back. And the Ringmaster then decides, oh, okay, well, we can talk.
This reminded me of the moment in Conan the Destroyer, where Conan punches the camel in the face and knocks it out.
Yes.
The camel spits on him and he knocks out the camel. Anyway.
Now, if you're a longtime listener, you know that traditionally one of Chris and my favorite things is when the superheroes have to go undercover in disguise. It happened so often in the Defenders.
Yeah.
And we love that. And we get that now because that night in downtown Latveria, the Circus of Crime comes to town and we get the Shroud disguised as a roustabout. And Namor is now disguised as the Raja. And he's riding an elephant.
It's the Submariner disguised as the Raja riding an elephant in the middle of a circus. Which is worth the price of admission all its own. But what they don't expect, Brian, is that Dr. Doom is there. They figure they're going to get away with this because Doom is dead. But no, Doom is there watching.
Right. Which leads to a very public fight between the two of them. The
Submariner says, oh, you lied to me, Shroud. You said Doom was dead. And now I'm bound by my vow. My honor demands that I surrender myself to Doom.
Yep. And Submariner takes off his disguise, goes walking towards Doom. He says, my honor, I have to fulfill my hated duty. And Shroud is having none of that. He slams Namor in the back, knocks him over. And Dr. Doom shouts down, "You there, peasant, what did you do that for?" But here's something very curious. Behind Doom, we see one of his people with some kind of remote control, and it's pointed at Doom's back.
Indeed. And then, Doom's forces surround the Shroud and Namor, and we say, don't miss Pawns of Atuma.
Because I'm confused. How can Doom, Chris, be on both Hydra Base and in Latveria at the same time?
We're going to have to wait until episode 101 of Defenders Dialogue to discover the answer to that question, Brian.
That's right. Because
I will say, before you get into previewing episode 100 again, I will say that that is Steve Englehart's last issue of Supervillain Team Up, which is sad because I was really enjoying the Englehart run And we go off on a completely different tangent now that makes short work of tying up the threads of what Englehart was doing. And we'll talk about it later, but I find it really interesting that the Shroud is initially abandoned, sort of. And then I think that readers must have been like, hey, I really like this character. And so he comes back into the series,
Right.
So anyway, continue.
So yeah, like we said, next episode, it's going to be, double the length, just like the old Bronze Age Marvel comics. When they'd reach issue 100, you'd get, a 48 page or a 72 page issue. It's going to be an extra long episode. And as we said, guest stars galore. Don't miss that. And once again, a shout out to our engineer, Matt Wilderson. Please, 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 folks. We know right now money's tight. Everybody's hurting. But if you have the means and you want to support this show, which we bring to you free every week, we don't charge you for it. If you want to support it a little bit, hop on Amazon and buy one of Matt's books, or better yet, hop on Twitter and message Matt directly and let him know, hey, I'd like to buy a book from you. Could you send it to me? Could you sign it for me? He will hook you up. True believer.
That's a good plan. That's true believers. True believers only. Your special code, true believers. All right. Well, Brian, I think that wraps it up for this week.
I think it does.
And I'm looking forward to episode 100. I feel like someone should illustrate a special image for that episode with some of us lined up on either side, facing off against one another, like the classic Defenders 100 cover. But
that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we don't have a budget, and we have a week to throw that together. So.
Well, I think Cullen can draw it.
But Cullen doesn't draw.
I know. That would be
all the better. Okay.
Segoski will draw it. Yeah. Anyway.
We'll see you next time,
folks. All I can say is Excelsior, true believers.
Defenders Dialogue is a production of the Brian Keene Radio Network. You can listen to this episode and all previous episodes for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play Music, and wherever else podcasts are available. Defenders Dialogue is written and produced by Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Our theme music is by Xander Harris. Our engineer is Matt Wilderson. Check out his books on Amazon.com. If you enjoyed this show, you might enjoy our other podcasts, The Horror Show with Brian Keene, Cosmic Shenanigans, and Grindcast. To advertise on Defenders Dialogue, visit briankeene.com and click Podcasts.